first up, last week, Databricks obviously had their Data and AI Summit, and they are an AI leader. They made a bunch of announcements ranging from their data warehousing capabilities to their ability to support models. But I think the one that really got my attention was around Shutterstock and Databricks' intention to bring more enterprise grade model capability for graphics and which we haven't really seen much of. We've seen a lot of work around model development and agent development, but really not so much around images yet. Uh, so I'm curious what you thought about that.
There are so many interesting aspects to this. First of all, I feel like we're watching like a literal war take place. With these skirmishes between Databricks and Snowflake, back and forth, and it's really in the world of tech, there's always a sort of competitive partner angle where it's like there's overlapping spaces, but you rarely see this sort of direct head-to-head competition that these two are. So it's like really entertaining watching them sort of duke this out. I think it's also indicative of the sort of movement towards what I'll call cross-domain partnership. So, they announced a partnership with NVIDIA, but as we talked about before we got on air here, that everyone's partnering with NVIDIA. That there's nothing real surprising. But this partnership with Shutterstock is sort of more similar to the partnership that we talked about a month ago with ServiceNow and Genesis when they announced that partnership, where it's these partnerships that are focused on sort of a joint go-to-market. And I think this one is really interesting from that perspective. And then additionally, from the fact that this is very, very specifically focused on image generation for the enterprise. And the only one else that's really talking about that is Adobe, and they're getting into all kinds of hot water. And I'm not
Yeah.
convinced that Shutterfly is not going to get in hot water on this one, because the fourth aspect that was really interesting to me is that yes, they have a controlled data set and that they own that IP or control that IP, but that IP is actually jointly owned by the creators that submit to that and are supposed to get paid when someone downloads their content. And so, there was nothing in any of this press release that talked about if those creators were being compensated for that.
Right.
And what I found most shocking was that they didn't actually address it, given how much hot water Adobe, because Adobe made all this hay about it and then sort of got in hot water of it, why that wouldn't be a top of mind issue. So I think it's just really interesting all the way around. It speaks to the fact that this is an area that enterprises care about, they need, they're going to be looking at this. I think it's a great example of what Databricks can do and can help an organization, bring something to market. So just a lot of really interesting aspects to this.
Yeah, one of the interesting aspects about generative AI, I think in general, is how it is bringing up the issue around creators' rights, something that has been declining over the past couple of decades with the rise of Spotify and social media and all these assumptions that creators really just give up all of their ownership rights or can only get a tiny pittance of a fraction of a cent for each view or each listen associated with their content. And now everybody is pushing back a little bit and realizing that with AI, there might be an opportunity to rewrite the rules a little bit with this fundamentally new use of technology. But I think also from a pure graphic perspective, looking at the enterprise, there is a massive need to figure out how to create new and novel graphics, but yet reward the content creators and owners that have led to that new content. So this is hopefully a step in that direction. As you say, there are still IP issues for the original creators of all of this content, but at least this is better than, say, all of the efforts that we see on, I'll just call out OpenAI, that is just happy to drag in whatever they can and build models without really seeming to care about the initial creators at all.
Yeah, I think and this is obviously a pervasive issue, and I think it plays on both sides. I mean, Perplexity has been in some recent hot water over their Pages technology, which Forbes just sued them about. They're saying they're scraping proprietary content and all of this. But there's also been some recent articles talking about how artists have sort of like looked at this more closely and are becoming a little less afraid, that they're realizing that Gen AI can replicate but really can't create new, and that's really what the drive of what an artist is supposed to be about. So I think I mean there's all these different factors. And I think, if you're an enterprise leader, obviously you're looking at this from the perspective of you can build this into workflows and that can speed productivity, and that's fabulous, right? I mean, as somebody who uses imagery with content, I spend 90% of that effort is searching, trying to find something that
Mhm.
represents what I'm trying to do. So the power of generative AI is I can just simply type what I'm looking for and it creates it, or finds it. And I think that is the interesting aspect of that from an enterprise perspective. But enterprises also need to be worried about the IP issue, right? I mean, every enterprise
Mhm.
is today mostly driven, or at least in part driven, by the proprietary nature of some of the content and IP that they generate. And Gen AI is a blunt force weapon, and so it will consume everything, and so every organization needs to be concerned about. So it's a really interesting dynamic. I don't, individually, this is not like a huge thing, but I think it's interesting because it's directionally indicative of sort of the some of the challenges that we're facing.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on AI vendors to definitely talk about how to keep up with the Joneses, to be the latest and the greatest, to always push the boundaries. Obviously, everybody is pushing the boundaries right now, but